Hello board gamers of the world, welcome to one more video here at the Curious Box. Today we have an amazing interview, because it's Friday of course, with the author behind this great phenomenon that is Magic Maze. He talked with us directly from Denmark via Skype, and he gave us a very insightful interview. I hope you enjoy it as much as me. Hi Kasper, thank you. Thanks a lot for accepting our invitation for this interview. My first question is mostly the first question for everybody I interview is, how did you get into the board game world?
I got into the board gaming world as a child, actually, making board games out of new board games out of the board games I had. The first one was based on Risk, I remember. But then in my adult life, I went into computer games and worked with computer games for some years, and then I returned to board games because that's really where my passion, my true passion was all along. But I had just thought that board games was going to be dead and computers would take over. But I realized that they weren't, and then I went back to board games.
But when was the moment when you decided that this was going to be what you were going to do in life?
I guess it was when I had made the prototype for Magic Maze, and I realized that this was a really good game. I had made games before that weren't so good that I would put everything in it to try to get it out. I was waiting to have the right game before I was going to show it to any publishers.
What were you looking for professionally? I mean,
Actually, I was writing books for children for a couple of years. Well, from until 2010, I worked with computer games, and then I stopped that and tried to become an author of children's books. And well, I have written some children's books, but I haven't had much success with it. And then when I had developed Magic Maze, I went to the board gaming industry instead with some more success.
Do you remember when and how did the idea for Magic Maze came to you? Because it's a very different concept.
It came to me during role-playing and board game festival in Denmark, a small festival for 500 people. And there's a board gaming competition there that I was entering for some years. And I wanted to make a game that was perfect for that audience. It should be kind of a gimmick game. And then suddenly I came up with the idea of not being a pawn but having to move pawns in cooperation, and so you only had a direction. But I realized that if that should be any challenge at all, you had to be silent and you had to have limited time. And then I made the game, and I found out that it was actually very funny, and it was not just a gimmick game. I thought it would be something you'd say, haha, that was funny for a while, let's play something else. But I found that that this really worked and was actually funny to play again and again. Yeah.
To how many publishers have you brought the prototype?
I remember I had 8 meetings in Essen
Yeah.
in 2015, and actually sit down wasn't one of them because I had sent them the game before Essen, and they were looking at it already, so there was no reason to meet. But this was not Magic Maze actually. This was called Hive Mind, and it was a much more complicated version of Magic Maze. So the 8 publishers turned it down. They thought it had an interesting concept, but it was too complicated. And Sit Down did the same, but they had an idea for how um,
Simplify.
to make it less complicated. Yeah, or actually, no, they didn't have an idea, but they had the idea to simplify it. They said, "Have you considered making this into a more simple game so you could reach
A
10,000
wider
people
audience.
instead of
Yeah.
1,000?" And that was a good way of saying it because of course I'd like to reach 10,000 people instead of 1,000. So I took up the challenge and simplified the game and went back to them, and they said yes.
And how does it feel to have your game nominated for one of the biggest awards in the world?
Well, it's nothing special. I know it feels great, of course, and a bit surreal because usually I'm just home. Making board games is pretty lonely. Most of the time, making the prototypes, I sit alone, and of course I play them with people, meet up with people and play them. But it's also very very lonely. And then suddenly you are in at this award show, and yeah, that's really surreal.
Besides of the idea to simplify the game, what do you think was the main role of the publisher to make it, because it's not enough to have a good game to make it well succeed, right? So what was the role of what do you think was the main role of the publisher here? Or what did they make to make Magic Maze to stand out from the other games?
Mm, when it comes to game development, their main role was to push the right buttons in me, if you know what I mean, to say, could we have something like this? And then I would have to be the one who actually invented it. But they were very good at saying this works and this doesn't work. Please go more in that direction. Um, and then they are the ones who came up with the theme. When I made the game, it was totally themeless. It was just about four guys trying to escape a labyrinth of some kind, or a maze. So they figured out it should be in a fantasy mall, which I think it's a very funny theme. It's not everybody loves it, but a lot of people finds it funny, and I love looking at the tiles, all the little details. They are very funny. Um, and then of course they did great work promoting the game. I'm not sure another company would have made the game this successful.
Yeah.
So that means a lot as well.
Um, I just read yesterday your article on Board Game Geek, on Designer's Diary.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and now that you're talking about it, it's funny that I've been interviewing some other designers, and some of them, I would say most of them, they come first with the story, then with the mechanic, or sometimes at the same time. But I realized that you work otherwise? You think about some mechanics, and then
Yes.
so it was this also with the potion, right? You didn't have really a theme.
I always design with the mechanics first, and then the theme can change. Usually, it changes a lot of times during the game development. And the first version of Magic Maze, the one called Hive Mind, that was in space with aliens attacking a spaceship. So yeah, it changed.
Are you thinking about releasing a second version of Magic Maze with another scenario?
Yeah, actually, Hive Mind will come out one day, the advanced version. Um it keeps being pushed back, but we signed the contract, Sit Down and Me, but there's just other things that have been more important. Right now, it's the trader expansion for Magic Maze I'm working on, and I'm
What's
also
coming
working
next?
on. Sorry?
That's what's coming next. The expansion.
Yeah, yeah, the trader expansion, and also an alternative version of Magic Maze where you are not moving the pawns in specific directions, but instead you are moving them on specific colored roads. So there are roads of 6 different colors, and
Yeah.
maybe you're the only one who can move resources on the green roads. So yeah, it's the same base concept as Magic Maze, but it's the
No,
feeling is quite different.
it
Also, the expansion, the trader expansion that's coming out, where you can play, you can be a trader, or you can have a secret role with either a rule that you must follow or a mission that you must succeed in. Uh, it also makes Magic Maze into a totally different game. It's kind of mixing Magic Maze with Werewolf. So it's a new experience. It's not just more of the same.
when is it coming out? The expansion.
Uh, I don't know. I hope soon. I hope that it will come out early next year, but that's up to Sit Down.
And are you planning any other expansions for Magic Maze?
Well, I have loads of ideas, but it's up to Sit Down if they want to release them and how quickly they want them.
And any other games coming in the future? In the near future?
The near future, yeah, Xcode, which is coming out at Amigo Spiele, which is a kind of yeah, you couldn't say reverse Magic Maze, but you are allowed to talk in here, but and you are going to talk a lot. But apart from that, it's just like Magic Maze, a real-time game and a co-op game. But you play with cards, and you have to gather sets in your hands. But you can only exchange with the people next to you, and the arrows on the cards have to go in the right direction. So in order to get a card over to John, who's sitting over there, maybe I have to first get it to Peter, who sits here, who has to exchange it with another person, who has to exchange it with another person, and finally John gets the card that he needs. So there's a lot of talking and communicating around the table.
So it's
But
the opposite of Magic Maze.
yeah, the same and the opposite at the same time, because you have the 3-minute SAM timer that can never run out, and that you can turn it over when you gather specific sets. So that's the same as Magic Maze, but the rest of the game is completely different.
Um, what do you think is the secret for a good game? I mean, if there was someone thinking about creating board games for the first time, they never created any, but they love board games and they think they could come out with a good board game. What advice could you give to someone who is creating a first board game?
I think the most basic thing that needs to be in a board game is interesting choices, especially if it's not real time, because in real time you can have some uh, it can be interesting not just to be fast, but if you have a turn-based game, interesting choices is essential, and that's I hear many I see many people their first attempt at a board game, they figure out a great theme, or it wouldn't it be great to make a game about I don't know, having a factory or being having a coffee shop, and then they make a game about this, but they take all the obvious choices um, and when you play the game, you basically just you don't have a choice. You just do what the game tells you to do. If does that make sense?
Yes.
Uh, so yeah, interesting choices. The perfect game always gives you around 2 to 3 choices that might be the right choice, and you have to figure out, should I go down that lane or down that lane, and you don't know yet what's going to be best, but you make a choice, and then 2 turns later you realize, no, I should have done the other thing. That's the perfect game, I think. If you have 10 choices, then you're getting overwhelmed, and if you have one choice, then it's boring. So 2 to 3 choices is perfect.
And this was Kasper Lapp, the mind behind this great game, Magic Maze. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Next Monday we'll have a new video here at the Curious Box. On Facebook only we will have again one more chapter of the Reflections of a Tabletop Teacher, where I talk about my adventures teaching board games to little kids. It's a very insightful reflection, and it's a great experience. So I hope you also enjoy it. If you are new to the channel, and if you liked it, just subscribe the Curious Box. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. For now, that's all. We'll have videos as you know, every Monday and every Friday here at the box. Very soon we'll have some news, some different stuff coming here at the channel. So stay tuned, because I will see you at a table next to you.